Well, thank you, Margot, and thank you for that wonderful introduction.
It's
I
true.
I loved it. Loved it.
We were talking about how our paths have had similar. We've traveled on the similar path not taken, I guess.
Yes. Uh, you studied under a Gestalt therapist, and I studied under a Gestalt therapist. The originator, his wife, Laura Pearls. I studied with her, and I also was an actor in New York. I was a Shakespearean actor. And as I mentioned, I went to the Board of Education because I had a BA in English literature. And I was looking for extra work because as an actor, you have to have what is called a day job.
Yes.
Because you're out of work most of the time. And so I asked them if I could become a substitute teacher for the New York City school system. And I received a certificate, and I was getting calls to come in to different schools. And I figured this is really cool because if I get an audition or something and one school calls me up and says, our teacher is missing, can you get down here to Brooklyn within an hour and a half or something? I could always say, I'm very sorry, I have an audition, call me tomorrow. As time went on, I found myself doing the opposite. I found myself telling people who were inviting me for an audition, I'm sorry I got a classroom today, because I just fell in love with teaching. And so we do have similar backgrounds in that case. Also, your connection with the Association of Applied Therapeutic Humor. We were both members at different times, and also you discovered humor through common teachers of ours, Joel Goodman and Matt Weinstein, with the games and things that we both learned from them. And so, and also I met a person at an improv workshop who knew you and sent me one of the interviews that you did with a fellow from Jerusalem who I did reserve duty with his father. His father's name was Joe Romanelli. And you did an interview with his son.
Oh, I did not know that fact. That's really interesting.
Yeah. His father was with me during reserve duty, and he wrote to me and said if he's ever in Tel Aviv, we got to get together because our paths are also very similar in many ways. And also in the field of the theater improvisation. And you studied also laughter, yoga laughter.
Yes.
With Steve Wilson, and I did as well, and with Madan Kataria. So we have a lot of things in common. And I think this is wonderful for our first date.
I think so too. And
why can't there be more first dates like this?
I know. It's like we don't need 7 degrees. We're like right there next to each other. So in your wonderful book that's going to be published on Kindle soon, I believe. Is that correct?
It's going to be published at Amazon Kindle. It's called Everlasting Optimism. And I loved writing it. And people who have read it, I've given it to several people. It came out as a book several years ago here in Israel with the title of the same title, but I called it in English, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to Enlightenment, which my wife thought was too long for a title. She was right. And so that I sold that for a while. That's on Amazon. But if somebody wants the Kindle edition, which is much cheaper than getting it the hard copy, it'll be out probably around December. Around maybe the beginning of December.
Great. And it's a wealth of information. It was like quotes from different people that I've like Viktor Frankl and different people that are just have had beautiful experiences with the human psyche and experience. And it's a spiritual book as well. And one of the things I've been doing, once I started doing improv, I saw the therapeutic benefits, but I also saw spirituality in it. In the commonality, and same with when we're doing humor and laughter games. So I want to ask, how a boy that was in special ed ended up where he is today.
That's what I can't understand. When I was in seventh, eighth, ninth grade, I was put in a special education class. I was considered disturbed, and I'm still disturbed, thank God. The difference between a disturbed child.
I think they're coming for you right now. I can hear the sirens in the background.
Well, I hear a knock at the door. Somebody with a white coat is coming in. Yeah, I can hear it too. Where was I? You see what happens when you get to be 81, you just forget where you are. I have to do this, by the way, when I'm giving a lecture or a stand-up routine or a workshop. I ask the audience, please tell me where I was, because at this age you got to. And they helped me out. They said you were talking about so and so. So where was I?
You were in 6th or 7th grade, and they decided you needed special ed because you were so darn creative, is what I think. But that's.
Well, they called it disturbed, and the reason I said that I'm still disturbed, thank God, is I discovered the difference between a disturbed child and a disturbed adult. A disturbed child gets humiliated, and a disturbed adult makes tons of money. So what was to them a disturbed, or what they wrote in my record I saw, overly joyous. And I got I got on pills, and things became. I mean, there was no difference when I took the pills. After 2 weeks, everything was the same, only slower. And I would spend the whole day focusing just on my shoe. And I wasn't fooling around in class anymore. And they even brought my father in to see the educational progress, watching a kid looking at his shoe. That was the only thing that interested me. And I got my best grades as long as I was taking pills, because I was quiet. But and eventually I got into college, and that's a very, very interesting story as well. I put it in my book. And I went to Emerson College in Boston, which is a school for the theater, as well as English literature and also speech therapy. Mm-hmm. And I finally got my BA in English literature, so that I was allowed to teach English for the school system in New York, the New York school system. While I was an actor, if you want me to go on, I got the feeling that I wanted to travel, and I didn't have any money. I just needed some adventure. I was tired of going to auditions, and I was tired of being a Shakespearean actor. And I met a friend who said, if you're looking to travel and you don't have any money, go to the Jewish Agency on Park Avenue and tell them you want to go to Israel and become a resident, and you'll get a free ticket on El Al. You know what El Al stands for? Every landing always late. So, she said that you could also learn Hebrew for free for 6 months, and they would give me a place to live and food and everything to help me out to become a resident. And I didn't even know where Israel was. I had to go to the library. In those days, we didn't have smartphones.
What?
So I had to go.
What year was this?
1964.
Uh-huh.
63, actually, because I remember the death of Kennedy, Kennedy assassination, influenced my wanting to leave for a while. I was very much moved by that experience. He represented a lot for me as a president of the United States. And when he was assassinated, I became rather depressed. And so I went to the library to find out where Israel was, to find out where I'm going. And I opened the maps, and I could see Egypt, and I could see Syria, and I could see Lebanon, and I could see Jordan, but I couldn't find Israel. Until I went out into the Mediterranean Sea, and it said in the Mediterranean Sea the word Israel with an arrow pointing back to a place that was so small they couldn't write the word Israel in it. So I said, that looks cool. I mean, I didn't know we had any enemies. I didn't know I didn't know that Egypt at that time was an enemy or Lebanon or Jordan. I thought that everybody just loves Jews, you know. Very, very innocent person, especially after the Second World War. And so I went down to the Jewish agency and I said, could I have my free ticket? I want to go to become a resident of Israel. So the representative said to me, sit down, I'd like to talk to you. Do you have any family there? I said, no. Do you have any friends there? I said, no. He said, do you speak Hebrew? I said, no. He said, what is your profession? I said, Shakespearean actor. He gets up and he says, you're going to succeed big time. And I said, how do you know? And he was very confident about this. He said, well, it says in the book of David, the Psalms, the book of Psalms, he said, I can show you where it says that God protects schmucks like you. It doesn't even say the word schmuck. It uses a different word, but in Hebrew, it's something like innocent fool, you know, who just goes someplace, who doesn't even know the language, doesn't know the people, doesn't know anything, just goes, takes that leap of faith, knowing that everything was going to work out okay. And so I came and studied Hebrew for a while. Went to a kibbutz and stayed. Kibbutz was very, very interesting. It was a very, very communistic. You know, everybody was equal. Everybody worked for free, and everything was done for free. Your laundry was done for free. For your work, you know, you did a day's work. You got 3 meals a day. Your laundry. If you got ill, you went to the clinic. Everything was just, perfect communism. But I loved it in the beginning, and I thought it was, wow, this is ideal. But when it began to infringe on my own liberty, and coming from the United States, I mean, we so worship and idolize freedom. You realize how much you don't have in a socialistic setup or communistic setup, that the state or the kibbutz takes over your life and you can't even buy something or study something without the approval of the administrators or whoever was ever running the place at that time. So I went to a place called Eilat. I took a bus. I hope I'm not boring you.
Oh my gosh, no. I'm totally fascinated.
Okay.
I'm totally fascinated.
All day.
No.
And I go down to Eilat, which is on the Gulf of Aqaba, and you can look across the Red Sea and see Jordan perfectly.
Yes.
And I had no idea that we were at odds with each other. I just looked over there and saw this beautiful place. On November the 5th, 1965, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I got this feeling, and I don't know where it came from, but the feeling said or presented itself, go to the beach right now, go to the shore and sit there. Your wife is waiting for you. This was exactly at 3 o'clock. I looked at the clock, November the 5th, 3 o'clock, Friday. I said, okay, I'm the kind of a guy, leap of faith. I hear this voice or whatever inside. My wife is waiting at the beach. Okay. What's the worst that can happen? Don't tell me. So I go to the beach, and I'm sitting there, and I hear this woman talking, and without even looking at her, that's her. And I turned around, and I saw her. And I said, how do I introduce myself? Hello, my name is Lenny, and I'm your husband. I mean, that would knock her off her feet. I didn't want to do that. So I was enjoying the movie that I knew the script, and she didn't. It's like, you know what's going to happen. I know she's going to be my wife. Mm-hmm. I had known nothing about her. I don't know her parents. I don't even know her last name. Mm-hmm. But you're in a situation where you know what's going to happen and she doesn't, and I'm smiling and I'm laughing and I'm having a great time. Because you're watching a movie with somebody that doesn't know, he's never seen that movie before, And I know exactly what's going to happen. And we went out that evening to hear a guitar player. And we just spent the whole evening just talking, all day talking. And then she said to me, I live in Jerusalem. And I have a bus tomorrow at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I have to get on that bus. And I said, okay, can I help you with your luggage? And she said, yeah, I'm staying at my girlfriend's aunt's place, and she lives right over there. So at 3:15 or something, I came and took her suitcases and walked her over to the bus stop. And I said, what am I going to tell her? She doesn't know. So she gets on the bus, and I said to myself, I got to tell her. So I bring the suitcases, and, you put the suitcases on top. There used to be a place where you put the suitcases. I looked down at her. She looked up at me, and I said, go home and tell your parents you're getting married. And in those days, you didn't have a phone. I know very few people had a phone. You had to use a public phone. She had a phone in her home because her father was an official for the post office. And doctors had a phone, policemen had a phone, and post office officials had a phone. Doctors had phones, but nobody else did. Everybody was using everybody else's phone. So I said, what time will you get to Jerusalem? And she said, midnight. I said, give me your number. I'm going to call you and make sure that everything's okay, so I'm coming up next week. And I had to go out of my house at around 11:30 and start looking for a phone, and there was a fish restaurant. And Yossi's Fish Restaurant. And people are standing in line, and you put in a token, and you make your call. And I got to the phone, and I put the token in. And I called her, and they're screaming and yelling in her house. Everybody's up, everybody's drinking. Well, she's got 8 brothers and sisters. And I never came from a family that large. I mean, I have a sister, and she was an only child. But that's another story. So they come to such a large family. I said, I'm coming up next week. And I flew up to Tel Aviv. From Milan, I flew up. And then from there, I took a bus to Jerusalem. I met her brother immediately. She brought her brother to the bus station. Very nice-looking fellow. And I didn't know what a Sephardic Jew was. I didn't know the Jews from Spain. I thought the Jews only spoke Yiddish because I was born in Hartford, Connecticut. And any Jew that would meet another Jew anywhere, they would speak Yiddish. If he was from Romania, or he was from Russia, or he was from the Ukraine, or wherever, from South America, he spoke Yiddish. And I didn't know there was such a thing as the Moranos, the Jews that were expelled from Spain, and her family is that line. So I met this incredible family, and they accepted me so beautifully. I have never had this kind of a love and affection, and it was just lovely. And I took her father to the other room, and of course the whole family, all 8 children, and the mother and grandmother all had their ears to the keyhole. And I said, open up your diary. I want to know when is the first day we can get married. And he opens up his diary. He said, the first day you could get married. Now this is November I met her on the 5th, so it would be the 12th. This is November the 12th. I said, can we get married next week? He said, no, it's Hanukkah. He said, the earliest you can get married is the 21st. I said, write that down. That was 52 years ago. We're still together. And we've had quite a ride. Quite a ride. Of course, if you ask her side of the story, it'll be a lot different. She has a different version. But that's most of my life. I'm just taking that leap of faith, just listening to that. This is the time to do this. This is the time to do that. When you asked me if I did Feldenkrais, and I said no, I've heard so many wonderful things about it, and I never did it because there wasn't that thing inside of me that said go for it. When I read Gestalt, I felt vibrations in my body. When I heard about the Association of Applied and Therapeutic Humor, I said, that's it, I'm going. And I'm going to study with Laura Pearls. I'm going to study with Madame Katarian and Steve Wilson and Joel Goodman and Matt Weinstein and study all these things. And I didn't know why. And but that's more or less how I live my life. It's just hanging on to it's like water skiing. You hang on, and you're in the here and now, and you can go this far this way, and you can go this far this way, but you go where the boat goes, and that's been more or less my line to the spirit, just to keep holding on to that line. It's been a wonderful ride. I've had terrible things happen to me, but they were wonderful too.
That's the most heartwarming story about how you met. And we forgot to mention Annette Goodman, Annette Goodhart.
Annette Goodhart, right?
Yes,
yeah.
I mentioned Annette, and her boat Tee. But the basis of improv is acceptance, and they talk about yes and so you've lived a yes and life. You say yes, and I'm going to do it when it feels right, and you take those risks, and that's such a beautiful thing. And yes, some bad things, some good things. You know the story about good luck, bad luck. The one about you've heard that one, right?
Yeah, well, that's terrible. Well, you never know.
Huh?
And then I said when he said your horse ran away.
Yes.
They said, "Oh, that's terrible." So you never know. The horse comes back with another horse. Oh, that's great luck. You never know. It keeps going on like that. You never know. Yeah. So just sit back and watch the show.
Right, and I knew that you would know that story. So you talked a little bit about what attracted you to Gestalt therapy. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Like how old were you when you were introduced to it, and what was going on in your life when you were first exposed to Gestalt?
Well, I had just come back. See, my wife and I, in 1967, decided we had a son then. He was 6 months old. His name is Not. And my sister wrote to me and said, I never had the opportunity of seeing your wife. And my mother was also in Birmingham, Alabama. She said, come and you can stay at my place until you find a place, till you find a job. And so took the leap and went to Birmingham, Alabama. Now, Birmingham, Alabama is a strange animal, because at that time there was apartheid. I mean, there were the black theaters and black schools and black water fountains and black toilets and white toilets only. And on the bus, the blacks had to sit in the back and the whites in the front. It was total mess all through the South, not only Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana. And in 1967, there was a court order from Washington saying schools must be integrated. Now, when I got to Birmingham, there was no such thing as a male teacher, a male white teacher. If you saw a male white teacher, he was a teacher because he was really a coach, the football coach or the basketball coach. And they had him teach history, head teachers. And so they were mostly women, because the pay scale in Alabama, Jefferson County, was $500 a year more than the poverty level. So people who were teaching were making $500 above the poverty level. And so when I went to the Board of Education, they said, here I am, white, Jewish, male. Are you willing to go to a black school and become the first white teacher in the history of Alabama to go to a white school? Because we can't get volunteers. I said, of course. And I didn't care about the pay. I just knew that that's the place where I had to be. My wife at the same time got a job teaching Hebrew at one of the Hebrew schools, Jewish day schools. And I saw what talent I had there. I heard them singing. I saw them dancing. And I said, would you guys like to do a musical called Guys and Dolls? And they said, well, we saw it on television. You want to do that? So I went to the principal and I said, can I do a musical? He said, whatever you want, I'll give you all the support you need. And I had auditions, and they were amazing. And we did the first musical in 1967, 1968, I think it was. It was also the year that Martin Luther King was assassinated. And it was amazing. They did Guys and Dolls. It was such an amazing show, and it was such a joy to direct them. And then the next year I said, okay, guys, we're going to do Music Man. And some reason, God or somebody in space out there heard me, because what's appearing on television, and how many stations do you get in Birmingham at that time in the 60s? The Music Man is on, and everybody's watching. And we did that, and then Bye Bye Birdie. And I got my master's degree at a place called Samford University in Birmingham. Now, this is a Baptist university. People usually study to become a pastor. But they had a program in education for MA. So I go there, and I give them my records, and they said, we can't accept you. And I said, why? And they said, because you have a 78 average, and in order to study for an MA, you have to have an 84 average. Now, I know I'm going to study there. It's like I knew I was going to marry my wife. Okay, so I got to go through this movie. Okay, let me speak to the president. Okay, I know I'm going to study there because it's going to happen.
Right.
You just know it. So, you want to see the president of the university? I said, yeah, I want to talk to the person. They never had a request like this from one of the students. So they make an appointment with me, and Dr. Allen is sitting there in his office, and he takes my record, he has my records, and he throws them across the desk. And he says, you can't be accepted. You don't have an 84 average. You have 78 from your BA. And I don't know where it came from. I didn't prepare. It was a yes and moment. I looked at him and I said, is this a Baptist university? He said, yes. I said, tell me, if Jesus Christ were sitting where you are now, would he accept me? Don't know where it came from. I just knew that I was going to study there, and the script came. Mm-hmm. And he goes like, you can see his body language. He was getting all, okay, on condition. And I got in, and I got my master's degree. And after 4 years of spending at Winona High School, which is an all-black school, white teachers began to come in. They saw that I was there, and I'm still alive. One day, the Black Panthers came to my class. That was the day after Martin Luther King was killed. And all of a sudden, I didn't realize what was happening, but I'm sitting at my desk in the classroom, and the entire football team is standing around my desk. I said, what are you guys doing here? He said, Mr. Ravitch, we're not going to let them get you. They're coming after you. We're not going to let them. And they stood around my desk like this, like a football. And the Black Panthers came into my classroom and started to throw furniture around and stuff. And I was looking at this as if, this is not real. This is the news. And one of the guys stands up on my desk from the Black Panthers. He points to me. He's up on my desk. He's pointing down to me. He said, this is the white man who sends the black man to Vietnam to kill the yellow man. He's the devil. And the kids were looking at him, and the football team was looking at me, just making sure that I wasn't going to get hurt in any way. And the guy on my desk looked down at me as if I was going to say, hear this, young man. I didn't do anything. I just looked at him and said, that's cool. That's pretty good. White man sends a black man to Vietnam to kill the yellow man. I'm the devil. Cool. It was a beautiful script. Yes, and. So he finally leaves and says, come out with me, let's march for Martin Luther King. One student left. And I just wanted to put that in as one of my adventures. Mm-hmm. And when I got my master's degree, I got a call from the University of Alabama. They wanted me to be a speech and drama lecturer, or what do they call it, instructor. And that was heaven. That was absolutely heaven. By this time, I have 3 children. And I realized something. If I stay in America, my children get my sister. My mother had died in 72. It was now 1973. And the only family I had was my sister. So what do all my children get? An aunt. If they go back to Israel, they get a grandmother, a great-grandmother, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, you name it. If you're going to make a decision like this, to go back to from the richest country in the world to one of the smallest, poorest countries of the world, you better have a pretty good reason. And family, for me and for my wife, we have the same values about family, and she agreed to come back to Israel. And when we came back, I was offered a job in Nazareth to be a supervisor for English teachers. And I often tell people I was in a special education class. And they said, but you're a supervisor of teachers. And I said, yeah, well, that shows you the level of education here in Israel. So that brought me to when I picked up, he was saying, how did I get to Gestalt? A friend of mine who is a psychologist living in another village next to mine said, I think you would like this book. And he gave me the book called Gestalt Therapy Verbatim by Fritz Perls.
Right, right.
I couldn't put that book down. I read it again. There was something about this that was missing in my life as a director. As a director, I like to get into the emotions. I like to get into people's authenticity. Right. And I never saw anything so authentic as this. This was true improvisation. True improvisation. To go with the moment, to go with the feeling, to go with the experience. My whole body began to vibrate. I said, this is who I am now. This is what I'm going to be. I went to New Orleans, to the Gestalt Institute of New Orleans, and studied there. Got a degree, certificate. It said, where's my certificate? Gestalt Institute of New Orleans. This is to certify that Leonard E. Ravitch has satisfactorily completed the hours that I needed. So I come back to Israel, and the first thing I do, I'm living up in Nazareth, which is right near Haifa. I open up an institute. And I didn't really have the experience. I just had a few classes in New Orleans. And I said, I have to do this. I have to take that leap of faith. Mm-hmm. I'm going to get killed. You know, but there's no such thing as going into battle and not coming back with scars if you don't die. And that nearly happened as well. But spiritually, anyway. But that was the thing that brought me and attracted me to Gestalt was that it's actually a therapy of improvisation. You don't have a theory or analysis. You don't use your mind. You don't ask questions about the past. You're not an archaeologist. You're with a person here and now. What is going on here and now? Because the healing is in the Martin Buber called it the I thou.
Right.
It's in the moment.
Right.
Because I'm checking a person how they're communicating with me. And I had to go to therapy myself, which is a very interesting story. Because I went to therapy because I said I can't take care of other people if I don't go to therapy. So I'm in therapy and I'm talking a lot about my wife, and my therapist says, I want to meet your wife. So I go home and I said, my therapist wants to meet you. My wife is a psychiatric social worker.
Yeah,
and she says it's not going to help. I said, that's great advice coming from a psychiatric social worker. She finally agreed, and we went in there. And the next week, I went to my therapist. She said, you know, Lenny, you're a very, very outgoing person, and you're almost on the edge of madness. But when you're with your wife, you're like this very quiet introvert. I said, I didn't notice that. I went home. I told my wife, my therapist says that without you, I'm magnified 100%. And when I'm with you, I'm like a turtle. I mean, what do you call it? A turtle in a hailstorm. And she looks over at me and she says, bullshit. So when people ask me, how did you last so long in your marriage, 52 years? And I say it's because of the most marvelous emotion in the world, fear. She's afraid to be alone, and I'm afraid of her, deathly afraid. Scared out of my mind. She walks in, first thing I do is I start to shake. I mean, it's such fear you have no idea. And I think any man who admits that, you know, I look at women in general, or people in general, but mostly women, as perfect. I never met an imperfect woman. I can find plenty of perfect men, but I never met an imperfect woman. So whenever my wife says to me, we should be ready at 6. I said, whatever you say. She says, why don't you give me what you think? I said, because you're perfect. Everything you decide is perfect. She said, well, the reason I want to go and see, don't explain. Perfect people don't have to explain anything. You said 6, I'm ready at 6. That's it. So it's from fear. I love being afraid. Love it.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful. I want to get back to the idea of be here now, which our dear friend Ram Dass coined many years ago. A beautiful, and Ram Dass's work with death and dying is something incredible.
Be here now.
Very impressed. Yes.
It's really, very old.
Yes. Wonderful.
He's had a tremendous impact on
me too. How did he impact you, Lenny?
Well, I was studying Gestalt at that time. And I was also facilitating workshops when I read this book. And it was a true Gestalt experience because the man was living another life. He was living an academic life. And suddenly this change came over him when he realized that this is not who I am. And the shell fell off. And he went on this spiritual journey to Tibet, was it? Wherever he went, and looked for his guru. And when he found his guru, it was like when I found my wife. It was exactly the same kind of thing. He knew it, that this man is going to be his guru. And he had something happened to him, a heart attack or something, or a brain injury or something. Something happened lately, when I say lately, 10 years ago. And it affected his speech. But he, for me, was a real person. And going with Gestalt together, it's sort of like everything came together, everything met together. And at that time, if you remember, back in the 70s, late 60s, 70s, right around the writing of that book, music began to change around the world. You had the Beatles doing their India stuff. You had people who were playing from soul. They weren't playing just for the money, for what it's become, just let's sell these records, let's get you on TV, let's dress you like this, put your hair up like that. It was really soul music. Unfortunately, a lot of the artists burnt themselves out and died very young. But that was a change in music, and a change in the whole civilization of the United States. It was called the Flower Children at that time, the Flower Children. And things began to change rapidly, and then they went back to where they were before.
Right. Well, it was the years of tune in, turn on, and drop out.
Yeah.
And yes.
Timothy, what was his name? Leary?
Oh, Timothy Leary, yes, and the big LSD experience, and of course. But I was one of those I was at Woodstock. I was one of those flower children. All you need is love, but you do need to pay the rent sometimes. So, but
all the time.
this spiritual revolution that started going around the world and is still going on in places, even here in the States, I believe. We have this term mindfulness that has been so big, a big catchword. And of course, you know, Jon Kabat-Zinn, it's wonderful, his work. But mindfulness predates all this. The concept of be here now and Gestalt predates this fascination with what we're calling mindfulness today, because that's what we had learned years ago. Do you agree or disagree? Point, counterpoint.
Well, I absolutely agree. Mindfulness is actually what I learned when I studied Gestalt.
Right.
Then we used to call it awareness. What was therapy all about was just becoming aware and make choices from that aware place, not from the automatic recording in my head or something, or what my parents told me, what my grandparents told me. It comes from a place of choice. When you become mindful, today they call it mindfulness. In Gestalt, they call it awareness. The Zen Buddhists call it awakening, to become awake.
Right.
It's all the same thing. It's about being aware or being mindful of what is going on in the here and now. What am I experiencing in the here and now? I don't know if you saw my YouTube talk in Geneva, where I talk about mindfulness and education. If you go to YouTube,
okay,
you can just write my name and type in mindfulness and education.
Okay.
And I give a talk on that. And I also have audience participation. You can watch that as well, because it's like improvisation. I'll give you an example of what I mean by improvisation. How do I introduce it to an audience? These were children and teachers in Geneva for the international school. A huge audience, maybe close to 1,000 people. And I was introducing them to the concept of that education teaches the mind a lot, but there's not enough teaching of the heart. And where are our decisions being made? And how do you raise a family? From your intellect? You raise children. I have 9 grandchildren now. I can't be intellectual with them. So I taught on the stage, if you go to see that, I talk about the fact that there are 2 things going on that I learned in Gestalt when you're talking to somebody or having a meeting, what they call a meeting, dialogue. There's the content, and then there's the process. The process is all about the body language, the skin color, the eyes, what happens to the eyes, the heartbeat. You can feel that. You can actually sense someone's feelings. You develop an empathy, which is so much missing in our educational system. And so what I did was I said, I want to give you an example of that. How do you teach the heart? And I'm just going to give you a small smidgen of an example. And I said, who speaks a language other than German, Italian, because that's what they speak there, English, French? Who speaks another language? And the child raises his hand. He's from India. He says, I speak Hindi. I invite him up to the stage. And I ask him to be my grandson or my son or something, and he's coming to ask me if he can go on a vacation with his friends. But I want him to do it in Hindi. And why do I want him to do it in Hindi? Because I don't understand Hindi. But I'm going to pick up the process and understand him without understanding from the intellect, to show the audience how it works. So the kid comes in. I said, okay, act 1, scene 1, take 1, come in. And he was wonderful. You'll see it on YouTube. He goes, that's what I heard. So I answered him. And this, provoked a lot of laughter because we're communicating. He doesn't understand me. I don't understand him. Like me and my wife. We just make believe we do. And then I told the audience, I said, watch what happened. What you were watching was just the process. You didn't understand anything, but we communicated just from the heart. The heart is the process. So if you want to go and watch that on YouTube, you can see that. Mindfulness.
Actually, I've watched it twice already, but I'll be sure to include the link with our podcast. Absolutely. I've watched several of your YouTube videos, and they're all wonderful and enchanting. But that little boy was great because you were actually using gibberish, and he was delightful. That was a great example, I thought, of mindfulness. Absolutely.
Yeah, I do that a lot. I did that at Google. If you watch my
no, I haven't seen that one.
YouTube from Google, I took a guy from Portugal, and he spoke Portuguese, and I answered him in gibberish, and we communicated that way. What I do is I take the sentence from Steve Jobs, where he gave a commencement speech to the graduating class of 2005 in Berkeley. He said, the last words he said, stay foolish. Stay foolish. Now, you go to hear a speech from somebody who's talking to a graduating class from Stanford. You expect excellence and success and using what you've learned in school, and he says, forget all that. Just stay foolish. So I use that as the background to just go with the process. Be foolish enough to take that leap of faith where that man told me I was going to be a success big time, because in the book of David and the Psalms, it said that God protects schmucks like you. What he was trying to say is, a fool. You're a fool. You do things without thinking. You do them without knowing what's going to happen. You don't do any homework. You just know it's going to be okay. And that's why I wrote the book, Everlasting Optimism, which will appear in Amazon Kindle in December.
Yeah, there's so much in it, and really, it's such a gift to people who read it, who are not maybe familiar with a lot of this work that we've experienced and other things that you've done that are just incredible. So, what is currently on your plate, Leonard E. Ravitch? I don't know, what is the E? What is the E for?
Edwin.
Edwin. All right, Edwin.
I finally met a person by the name of Edwin. Never in my life met a person by the name of Edwin. About 5-6 years ago, I was in Singapore. I was doing a workshop for leaders. We use a lot of improvisation. And the guy tells me his name is Edwin. I said, that's my middle name. I never met anybody. But I could tell he was scared, because people in Singapore at that time had never gone through this kind of a workshop, where there was laughter and humor. It was mostly, let's look at the PowerPoint, let's look at this, and this is what you have to do. Everybody's writing stuff down to learn it. And this one was just open, and people were scared. They were on the edge of madness there. And so I met a person by the name of Edwin. What's on my plate now?
Yes.
I just got back from Kiev in the Ukraine. Unexpected call from an agent. My agent. I have an agent that I do movies, a lot of movies here in Israel. And she said, how would you like to go to the Ukraine and be in a movie in English? I said, what are they looking for? And she said, they're looking for a shtetl rabbi. Shtetl rabbi is a rabbi back in the 1890s, 1900s, that lived in that area in Ukraine. A 60-year-old rabbi. I said, darling, you know how old I am. You know I'm 81. She says, yeah, but you're not going to have much trouble with the English, are you? I said, send me the script. I don't know. Maybe I can learn a few words before the audition. And I go to the audition, and a young direct Israeli guy says, would you like to audition? I said, he says, action. And he goes like this. Now, look, we came from a generation where they had cameras. You walk in, you had a camera. Nobody ever said to me, action. So when I finish, he says to me, amazing. I said, why did you say amazing? He said, why did you ask me why I said amazing? I said, because I had many directors tell me amazing and I never heard from them again. I just want to know if you're going to be one of them. And I heard from them, and I went to Ukraine, and I spent about a week there, 8 days. It was a wonderful experience. Filming this movie, if I can show you a picture, you won't believe it.
Yes, please.
But
please do.
This is me.
Let's see. Yes.
Can you see?
Yeah, barely. Hold it up just a little bit, Len. And also, it's on Facebook. I can grab it off of Facebook too. It's beautiful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? I'll open it up more.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yes.
That's
wonderful.
Beautiful makeup they did on it.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that very much. What I'm doing now, what's on my plate right now, is I still perform, even at this age. And I perform for companies. And the name of my show is, I took it actually from Ram Dass. Dance Life, Don't Drag It. You remember that? Dance Life?
Yes.
You can either dance life or you can drag it. And the name of my show is Dance Life. And I do about an hour and 15 minutes talking about my experiences in life and how I use humor and improvisation to stay completely away from tension, which is a killer. Mm-hmm. Stress-related illnesses is doing everybody in. Staying away from anxiety. Just living in the here and now, because you know that you're developing an attitude of taking any situation and not confronting it, but actually yes-anding it. One of my examples is that I went to this coffee shop and I sat down, and the waitress came over and said, "Sir, you can't sit there." I said, "Why?" She said, "That's only the manager's seat." So this is a beautiful chance for improvisation and humor. So I said, "That means I'm the manager. You're fired." And she started to laugh. And I get on the bus, and I'm sitting next to this old geezer, my age. I don't call them old. I call them seriously mature.
Right.
And he looks at me, very, very, with a confrontation. "You hit me with your bag." So I took my bag. I said, "This is a beautiful time for improvisation." I took my bag and I went, "Naughty, naughty bag. Say you're sorry to the old geezer." Just to look on his face, he looked at me like, I think, if my intuition is right, he went back all the way to his childhood when people did things like that when he was a kid, like 3, 4, 5 years old.
Yeah.
You hit the bag and say, "Bad bag, naughty bag, say you're sorry." And I saw something in his eyes that went, oh, like it just took him back, And I have moments like that where I teach people that if you go for the tension, you have a choice. You can dance life. You can yes and life. You can improvise. And I give many, many examples. You remember if you saw my YouTube, I give an example of the time that I forgot my name as a radio announcer.
Yes.
And that was a wonderful way to teach the audience how to laugh. To actually just laugh for no reason. To teach yoga laughter with 1,000 people. And I did that at the AATH. I did it at Google. I do it all the time here in Israel. Mm-hmm. I use the gibberish, stay foolish, to stay with the process and don't go so much for the content the way most people do. They say, "Well, you said this and this." Watch more how it's said. Feel more. Get into the empathy of things. And people believe my performances laughing and coming to me and thanking me. and telling me that they had such a great laugh and it was very meaningful. And I use a lot of what I learned from Ram Dass, a lot of what I learned from Steve Wilson and Don Kataria, and all my former teachers. You know, you're standing on the shoulders of giants. And I'm really grateful for all those people who came into my life or I came into theirs. And we all took the leap of faith and did what we did. I also would like you to see, if you have a chance, I was coaching a boy, man, who had cancer, stage 4. And he decided to take a camera to the hospital with him and film everything. And when he got out, he's clean, healthy. And if you go into TED Talks and just type in the cancer that died of laughter.
Okay.
And I coached him. If you ask me what's on my plate now, I like to coach people. And I coached him in English and also how to give a TED Talk, even though I've never given one myself.
Right.
And he did this TED Talk, and he just got back from Singapore. I have an agent in Singapore, and I told him about Eyal. His name is Eyal, Eyal. And he invited him to Singapore, and he had 4 performances in Singapore. I just met him today before I came to talk to you, and he wanted to tell me about all his successes and what a great trip it was. And this is opening up for him. He's 35 or 36 years old, recently married. And this is really opening up for him a whole new world because he's Israeli, and he had to learn English properly and voice placement, where to place your voice, because his voice was worded over here, and I had to get it up. And I'm watching his success, and I'm feeling this wonderful, warm feeling that, you know, I could be his teacher, that I could be his. It's such an honor to be his mentor. And so that's what's on my plate right now. And anything else that happens. Phone could ring, get an email. Somebody might watch this interview and say, I'd like to talk to that guy. Absolutely. Or something like that. Anything can happen. Just get out there to the world. So when I contacted you through Robert, he sent me your link. I said, I wrote to you, and you immediately asked me, would you like to appear on a Skype blog or something? And I didn't, my goodness, should I? Maybe I'll talk to my wife about it. YES, and.
And I am so grateful you have and you are, and I am in the company of geniuses. You know, Del Close, considered the father of improv, talked about treating each other as geniuses, poets, and brilliant. And that beautiful sense that we have that we can almost immediately fall in love with each other by just being here. By just being here now, looking at your eyes and feeling like I've known you forever. And I am so grateful. And I'm hoping that this is just the first in a series of interviews with you, sir, that we might try some more. Okay?
Yes. Yes, and.
You had to say that. What a setup.
No. It's a joy talking to you. You're such a wonderful listener. And I'm watching you as I talk. And I'm watching all the kinds of processes that are going on with you. And your eyes and the color of your skin. And it's just wonderful to talk to you.
Vice versa, Lenny. So listen, you have a blessed day. And anything you want to shout out to people, of course that Ram Dass saying is beautiful, but as we close the interview, I'm going to invite you to say some closing words.
You want me to close this?
Yes, I do.
Well, it's a sentence that I teach my audiences at the very end of my program. When somebody asks me how I am, I ask them to please learn this sentence. Now is my best moment, because there is no other moment. And I say that to the audience. I said, I want you to do me a favor. I'm going to ask you how you are. Whether there's 100 people or 1,000 people, I orchestrate them. Now is my best moment. Repeat it after me. How are you? They all say, now is my best moment. There is no other moment. And I would like to get that over to the people who are interested in watching this blog. And one more thing, laugh as much as you can.
Goodbye, dear friend. We'll see you soon.
Goodbye, dear friend. Wonderful first date. Love you.
Thank you. Love you too.